James Wannis, thank you for joining me on my show today. James All About Business. This is about Kaizen, which is improvement and process optimization methodology. Now, Kaizen is a cornerstone of incremental and continuous improvement. Now, Kaizen helps to increase quality, decrease waste, reduce pain points, as well as rein in complexity. Stay tuned for this very important and vital methodology for your organization. So I very much enjoy Kaizen. I think it's important to all organization types, for-profit, nonprofit, and I think it's really something to think about because we're all charged with doing better. So what I think Kaizen is very important to doing is to obviously increase the quality, decrease the pain points that an organization feels. Really the point on this is helping your customers to get the best product or service possible. So I think a lot of organizations are not using this methodology and should. It doesn't matter the type of organization, whether you're a governmental organization, nonprofit, or for-profit. It's for all organizational types. Now, we're going to talk about, the background on this. Now, this comes from these two scripts here. This is a Japanese script, and on the left side is change, and on the right side is better. So it's implied that this is change for better. Now, this really comes down to being a symbol for continuous improvement. So I think this is a very attention-getting slide because 30-second savings per business day yields 5.25 days at the end of the year. That's a very small amount to reduce in a given day. And probably a lot of people, when they see this, would think that they could definitely, have those 30-second savings per day, if not more. So I think this is really important to think about. So imagine 1 minute to 5 minute savings per day on things you do already that you could optimize, reduce waste on, and help your organization to operate better and help your teammates to really find much more clarity in the work that they do. A bit of caution, while successive Kaizen events will yield more time savings, most organizations are complex enough that over time, some of the savings will be used up by new enterprise requirements. And in addition to that, competition may introduce more complexities into your business. But without managing any sort of continuous improvement program, you're going to be in your current state as well as having many more things to do. So having an organization that's designed better. So this is very important to think about because without doing this, this is where a lot of organizations get into problems. And you've been probably part of these organizations. I've been part of these organizations where nothing's been done for years. And the cumulative effect is that there's so many complexities and it's a difficult place to work in. Morale isn't great and there's decreased engagement. So I think these things go not just for time savings, but help the organization to run better and to increase employee engagement. So in the beginning, this starts with W. Edwards Deming. Now, W. Edwards Deming goes to Japan, and he's really pivotal in creating the PDCA or PDCA, which is Plan, Do, Check, Act, which I'll talk about more later. It's also thought as Plan, Do, Study, Act. So these things are really synonymous. Now, the concept of PDCA comes from Francis Bacon, an historical figure, the scientific method, which is hypothesize, experiment, and evaluation. Now, the PDCA is a system known for developing critical thinking. In the Toyota Production System, TPS, PDCA would elicit a belief in building people before cars. Now, the Toyota Production System was created between 1948 and 1975. Now, this is bringing together methodologies such as Kaizen, 5S, designing out burdens such as Mirai, inconsistencies, and also eliminating waste. John Kravitz in 1988 first coins the term lean. So James Womack and Daniel Jones in 1996 describe and define what lean is. So it's doing things with less equipment and time and space to produce excellent products and services. So eliminate waste and providing maximum value to customer. So we get started with PDCA in this standardization and cycling. So what we see here is the capability of what continuous improvement does over time. So increase quality, increase standards over time. So when you do one PDCA, you'll go through one cycle, one standardization, going up and ramping up to the next. I'll tell you more about what PDCA means specifically. Now, the idea is you do this successively, time over time. In fact, if you have a problem and you're working on that, you may not be able to solve that through one Kaizen. It may be successive number of times. So when you do that, it's really not just solving the problem for solving the problem's sake, but it's also educating and helping the team members to learn over time how to think about this. Every organization is going to approach each of these buckets differently. Let's talk about plan. Now, plan is to look at this in terms of what is a problem statement. How do you, conduct an analysis on the problem itself or the feature you're trying to improve, or maybe the simplification exercise that you're working on as a team. What does the future state look like? So that's the planning methodology. So the do function is develop the Kaizen plan, refine the Kaizen. If you need to do some testing to making sure that it's going to work, then that's what you do in order to get that to work well at the Kaizen event. So you implement the Kaizen event, and the Kaizen event is simply when you get together with a select number of team members that's working on the problem to solve for the larger team. So I've been part of 1 to 2 to 3 day Kaizens. Ultimately, you're going to have to scale that in terms of the difficulty of what you're trying to solve. Now, the C is standing for check. So you utilize KPIs, you observe what's occurring, you analyze results, you give feedback to the implementing team. And then on the A, the act portion, is to refine the Kaizen, refine the current Kaizen as well as future Kaizen events that will occur. Also sharing the learnings, because this is key. Without sharing these learnings, and that is for the management team as well as the implementing team and for the team that's working on a specific issue that the Kaizen is addressing. Now, there are recommendations that can come from this, as well as lessons learned, and also sustainment. So I definitely recommend sustainment, and maybe that's a continuous improvement manager where she or he can look at the Kaizen event, making sure that the Kaizen is being honored, and making sure that no team member is sliding back to old ways. It could be a coaching opportunity. It could be something that, it's observed, and it's something that is appreciated. As a team member myself, if a Kaizen manager, which I've not experienced before, would say, hey, I noticed that you have implemented, 60%, but you're not implementing the remaining 40%. I might, be very appreciative of hearing that because I can move that forward just a bit and improve that together. I may not realize something's not done. So your continuous improvement management team is essential to have there to help you. They're not there to post any blames. They're there to really keep things moving forward. Say there are two approaches, which is really one approach. You could do one event on its own. And while I think that's good to do for some organizations, I don't think there's any organization on planet Earth that you do not have a need to do successive Kaizens. They're very important to think about. So it's not just a Kaizen into itself, where I've experienced that before, where it's done once and it's forgotten about. And I think that's not the point of Kaizen. Kaizen is to think about this continuously, having the team members who are doing the work to think about this, as opposed to forgetting about it, like, oh yeah, we did that novel exercise, as opposed to this being an integral part of your organization. So you can have a Kaizen team or continuous improvement team that looks for opportunities and is constantly guarding through and looking for those opportunities and creating those events from those opportunities that those team members are finding. Implementing continuous improvement culture is done intentionally. So, this is really coming through executive sponsorship, executive support. It's not just a one-time support, but a continuous support of a Kaizen and continuous improvement program. So a continuous improvement culture is built by intent and by design. So by these particular initiatives, by having a continuous improvement culture, a continuous improvement plan is needed, and that's done by design. Ownership and management. Now, ownership is by all. Ownership is not just by a singular person. It's not just by the continuous improvement manager. It's by all team members. That is from the executive management team all the way down to the individual contributor. And lastly, learning. Learning is really, at the heart of what Kaizen is. Without learning, I think this is something where people miss out in having that culture. It helps to keep that continuous improvement culture moving forward. It's not something that people think is novel. It's something that people think is integrated. It's necessary to have in their organization to move forward, to build the best products and services possible. So don't boil the ocean. That's not the intent. That's not the intent of continuous improvement. It's not the intent of Kaizen. The intent is really to create incremental opportunities, incremental improvements in your organization to increase quality, to reduce problems and pain points, and really to set yourself apart from competition. I was actually part of a Kaizen where I'm actually observing, and that was the intent of my participation, was to be an observer. So the Kaizen instructor was utilizing the wrong tools. The team was not understanding why they were using, for example, a value stream map. And those results actually could have been done, in a different methodology, maybe a process map, which hadn't been done. So when I think of a Kaizen event, especially those that I've led, there really is time for questions. You have to make sure that people understand. So those individuals are going to teach their additional team members that couldn't attend the Kaizen what the new improvements are. So select the right people for the event. So it may be somebody who's almost an SME for this particular subject matter, but also maybe some team members, because you're going to find clues as to what's not going well in the process that you're discussing. And that can help to build to a better solution. It's not just one event, but a multiple of events. So it's important to acknowledge everyone, all participants, including those people that aren't participating, because maybe they freed up time for those participants to be there. It's their managers, it's the executive team. That's very important to do. So sustainment is really important. And Kaizen can be a standard, but sometimes it can go back to previous standards. And you can tap people on their shoulders and say, you know what, I noticed that this wasn't being done, this portion of the Kaizen. Are you going to implement this? Or do you need help to implement this? Or is there a coaching session that's needed with the team members who originally put this together? So, are there questions that, maybe weren't answered, or questions that arose after the Kaizen event occurred? So there's things to help out in terms of the continuous improvement manager. While that person cannot do every single improvement, the Kaizen instructor or the Kaizen lead, it's really important for that person and the continuous improvement manager, which can often be the same person, to help move that team forward and making sure they are doing things to improve the state of that enterprise and that organization. So all participants have to be allowed to ask questions or give a comment. I think it's really essential to making sure that they're being heard, and it feels better as a participant that you're being listened to. And maybe that's something that should be offline. That's where the facilitator can say, you know what, that's not related to this Kaizen, but we can talk about this at another time. So the awareness and inclusiveness of a Kaizen event should be no different than your organization's diversity and inclusion. And I think that's very important to think about. It's important to have that mindset and awareness that you're really making sure everyone is included. So Kaizen is needed now more than ever. Organizations are becoming much more complex than they've ever been before. And this is an opportunity to introduce a methodology. And it's something that when you have a methodology like this, it's actually getting concrete results. This should be for everyone to participate and to be part of this continuous improvement movement, but it's also to create that culture, to have that ownership as well. I know this is a very big topic. Thank you for joining me today. Put your questions and comments down below. I'll answer as many questions as I can. And if you have questions about your specific organization and a continuous improvement organization or continuous improvement plan or culture, please let me know. I'm happy to help out. I love talking about methodologies to improve all organization types. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.